Hi, welcome to Module 2, Chapter 2, Video 2. I'm just going to review with you what we've been talking about. We've been talking about I/O streams, C in, C out, and we've also talked about the string class using namespace standard. And we are now on change in flow of your program, which includes conditions and loops. So we are right here in change in flow. And so in this video, I'm just going to talk about my expectations for programming style and do a few examples in the compiler. So let's get down here to programming style. So in this class, we're going to use the data types int, double, char, string, and bool. Please do not use float. There's nothing wrong with float. It's just that I like to have conventions in my class, and it helps me to see that students have been paying attention. Please use meaningful variable names. Your variable name should start with a lowercase letter. No white space. They can't start with a number. They must start with a letter. They should describe the data. They should be identifiers that describe the data that you're storing. Please use cast from one data type to another if necessary. Please use good indentation and add comments. Too many comments is not a bad thing. So when you add comments, it indicates that you are actually working on your assignments and that it shows that you understand what you're doing. So I certainly encourage you, this is a class. We are not, this is just a class where you're learning. So when you add comments, that's a good indication to me that you understand what you're doing. So now I'm going to bring up the compiler, and I want to show you on Canvas. These are the notes that I was just going through. I also have 3 code examples that go along with the notes, and I will have code examples in each module on Canvas. So I'm just going to download these code examples quickly and put them into the compiler and talk about them. So each module in the instructional materials section, as you can see here, when you're in the instructional materials, there will be these videos that I'm recording right now. There will be notes. Those are my personal notes that I've made from the content in this chapter. And then I have made you some samples. Some of the samples come from the book. Some of the samples are my own. So be sure to go through and be familiar with all of the instructional materials. So now I'm going to launch Visual Studio and just put this code into the compiler and talk about it. So I like Visual Studio 2019. That's what I choose to use to test, to do examples. So I'm going to show you how to create a new project. So when you are using a C++, we are not C anymore, so we are C++. You do not need to create an empty project. You can actually just click right here on console application. You can't do that in C because this console app will create a C++ program. So for C, you have to do an empty project and add your code to the project. For C++, you can just click console app. When you click console app, it will create a console application for you. I'm going to just put this on my desktop. And I'm just going to call this COP3014 test. So this is going to just be my test project. This just creates the directory. Hopefully you're familiar with that. I click create. This is now going to create a directory on my desktop that with this project. Now you'll notice that it already, when you do it, if I open my source files here, it's already created everything for me with a main function. Now, the reason that when it creates this, that it does not have the, that it has this standard with this operator here that we haven't learned about yet, but we will learn about very soon, is because it does not have using namespace standard up here. But if you add the using namespace standard up here, then you can remove this and you don't need to keep that there. So I kind of like to show you that you can do that, and To be honest, it is much easier to put the using namespace standard up at the top of your program because, or at least in the functions that you are using cout and cin, because that makes it much easier. Otherwise, you have to add that every time that you use it. But I'm going to be using my code example, so I'm going to go back here and open up my first example. So this is my first code example that I've provided for you. It should work, hopefully. So I want to show you that all of the programs in this class, I want you to put more detailed program headers at the top of your program. Don't just put your name, date, and a short description. I would like your name, date, course, assignment, my name, and a much better, much more detailed header on your programs. And each programming assignment that I give you a template to help you get started so you don't forget to do that. All right? I don't know why that's still here, but that's all right. Then I'm including IOStream. I don't have any strings in this example, so I do not need to include a string. I have using namespace standard for cout and cin. And this is, I think we already looked at this. I have a couple integers and a couple doubles, and I have some interaction with the user. I ask for them to enter the rate of pay, and I ask them to enter the hours. If you notice, I don't have that with one prompt and cin with two things, which you can do, but I don't like it. And you need to get very used to using the insertion operator and the extraction operator. So you're going to practice. That's why I give you this code to read, to practice. And in program 1 is a very interactive program in which you're going to spend a lot of time practicing that. And I will be doing program 1 in the next video. Then I just have a simple condition here, an if else. You do know that it is possible to have just an if without an else, and that should work. It just means that it doesn't care about anything else. It only cares about if. In your first program, you will do a cascaded if, else if, with the last else. As a reminder, this is an expression right here whose result is a bool or a true or false result. We will be working with bools, just not on your first program. You will have assignments in which you will use bools. And this is also an expression whose result is a math value. This is the magic formula in order to display into 2 decimal places. And then this is displaying onto the screen. So if you take a look at it, you will notice that right here I am displaying hours worked with the starting parentheses, and then I have the hours, and then I have the ending parentheses after it, because in this you don't use placeholders. You just put your variable inside of the insertion operator. All right, so let's test it really quick, and then we'll go on to the next code. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time reading this to you. I think that you need to put a little time in here and understand how cout and cin work. Right here, this is a new line, just like you did in C, but this is another way to put a new line. So right here, if you notice, I'm putting 2 new lines. These could be replaced. These 2 new lines could be replaced with this, and that should do the same thing. So it's just not as it just looks better if you don't have the new line inside of a string. There really isn't any reason to add the \n like that. So I'm going to go back and show you that that is the same thing. All right, let's test it and make sure that it works. So enter the hourly rate of pay, $35.21. Enter the number of hours worked, 56. All right, so if you notice, this was the C out here, and I'll go back to it right here. Do you see how I put hours worked and then the parentheses, and then because the hours will be different each time, that is a variable. So that's the identifier that stores the value of that variable is placed here. You cannot put it mixed inside of a string like you did with placeholders. So you need to practice and get used to how C out and C in work. C in is easy. C out is a little more difficult. It's not difficult, you just have to get used to it. All right, so let's go here to the next example, which is a loop example. All right, so in here I have two loop, and these examples are right on Canvas, and I encourage you to put them into your compiler, try things. And like I said, if you want some extra help on loops and conditions, you can send me an email and I can send you links to some of my Intro to C videos on YouTube on loops and conditions. So this one is just going to say, this is a counting loop where you're going to find out how many greetings the user would like you to print onto the screen. Instead of counting from 0 up, we're going to count from the number that the user enters. Say they enter 10 down to 0. So this is your initialization. This is your test, which is a Boolean expression. It's going to evaluate to either true or false. As long as the countdown value is greater than 0, it will be true. And it's going to print hello on the screen. So it's going to print, if the user enters 10, it should print 10 hellos onto the screen. If the user enters 20, it should print 20 hellos onto the screen with a space in between each. When you're using cout, you can, everything you put between this string is going to be printed onto the screen. So if I left this space out, then it would print hello, 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 has all one big, huge word. All right, and down here, another thing I want to point out when you're using C++ is you can declare variables. They don't all have to be declared at the beginning of a function. So now that I'm going to need this variable down here, I can declare it down here. I think we started doing that in C as well. So this is, you're going to say, do you want another greeting? Yes or no. So this loop is going to continue as long as the user enters a Y, and it's going to stop as soon as the user enters anything other than a Y. In your first programming example, you're going to do something similar, only I've given you this as long as the answer does not equal n and the answer does not equal n. This will continue as long as the user does not enter an n, and it will continue as long as the user enters anything other than an n. So the two ways to do y or n is either like this, where you say as long as it does not equal n and it does not equal n, or the other way to do it is to say as long as it equals y or y. Also, in your Programming 1 assignment, you will be doing strings for your yes or no instead of characters, just to practice different things. So I'm not going to run this because I want you to try to test it, try different things, and if you have any questions, be sure to let me know. And the last example for this section is a little bit about the string class. So if you include string, if you notice here, I only have using namespace standard one time, so I don't need to include that more than once. So when you include string, you have a new data type here that you can declare strings, and you can use full strings of characters, which is very nice instead of having to declare character arrays. In chapter 8, I believe, or I don't know, later on in the semester, we will talk about C strings versus C++ strings. So here is just an interactive program. And also this is very interesting because you can add strings together. This is an expression right here that takes one string, adds a space, and then adds another string. So it adds all these three strings together, the name of the first name of the pet, a space, plus, it's just using plus, just like you use to add numbers together. And the ending result of this expression will be a string, and that string will then be assigned to the alter ego name. So this is just a little bit of getting you started with understanding how strings work. And we will break down strings in more detail after we do some array work. All right, so that's it for chapter 2. And so the next video I'll be doing will be your first programming assignment expectations.